for you before I begin the exercises that I've done is that the problems you'll see actually come from an older edition, so they will not match exactly. To prepare yourself, I recommend making note that the first example you're going to see me work will correspond in your textbook, the 5th edition, to page 108, number 153. Then you will see me work just an extra problem. It's not in your textbook, but it's another word problem on break-even points when you're dealing with money. After that, we'll move to page 113, number 19, and then to page 115. I'll show you example number 35, number 37, and number 39. And again, it's not necessary that you have your book open, but if you're wanting to be able to read the original words instead of just hearing how I'm translating, it may be beneficial for you. We really get into 2.3 after page 113. That's when we're officially in the section. And some things I want to remind you of. Key words that you've seen. Some obvious ones that you may have forgotten would be, for example, the word of translates literally into a multiply. And the word quotient literally takes you to divide. Whenever you have the word is, that literally takes you to an equal, so it's telling you to split the problem. And then, of course, probably the two trickiest ones we have would be more than and less than. We know that a word like more does actually mean plus. You're thinking addition here. And a word less would mean minus or subtract. So you would have a subtraction sign here. But when you have than, for both of these cases, the idea is that it's going to flip the things that you're talking about. The numbers, variables, whatever it is that that symbol would have normally gone in between, you'll flip it. For example, there is a big difference in me saying that 5 less a number is equal to 2 in comparison to me saying 5 less than a number is equal to 2. These are completely different. In the first example, you do literal translation where you bring down your 5. Less means minus. A number you don't know, well, you can use an n if you'd like, equals 2. However, in the example right below it, because of this word than, we're going to flip the two numbers. In other words, we know we still have subtract here for less, and you have a 5, and let's see, for a number we can still use n. But what we'll do is we'll take this front number and throw it to the end, right before the equal sign, so that we now have n minus 5 equals 2. Then we'll flip the numbers, or you can think of it as taking the first number and throwing it behind the other one. Basically, it switches it. Now let's look at the other examples I mentioned.
75 per unit, and the fixed cost is $39,000. What's fixed cost mean versus regular cost? Maybe it's just like set bills every month. Maybe your rent or how much you pay your employees' salary. Fixed cost means, you know what? It doesn't matter how much of these units I sell or that I make. This is my base bill. I always have to spend this much money per however often it's talking about. And I think this problem is talking about months, isn't it? How often is this? And it doesn't matter since it's all going to be the same time frame. But the idea is whatever it is they're paying for, the $39,000, that doesn't go up or down based on the product. The cost will go up based on how many they make. And based on how many they sell, that's going to change how much money they make. So how can we talk about this. How can we do what it asks us to do, which is to find the break-even point? So I'll put up here in red, find break-even point. That's the goal. That's kind of a new word maybe for some of us, isn't it? Break-even point. What would that mean? What are we talking about here? If I said I was gonna break even. Okay. It was equal, right? No gain, no loss. Good. So it's even at the break-even point. There's no gain or loss. Let me put that. No gain, no loss. So let's talk about the gain or loss. Let's talk about the profit in comparison to the cost or the expense. I bet if we could model that, then we could talk a little bit more about when one was not more than the other, when they were equal, right? So there's no gain or loss. When if you're a business person, you would say, I guess when profit equals the cost, or when revenue is equal to 0. But I'll say profit equals cost. There's a couple different ways to categorize it, but I think this is the easiest for us today. So let's talk about the easy one, profit. How can I represent how much money how much money I bring in at my cash register? How much am I charging per one I sell? Okay. So if I'm selling each of them for $325, let's think about this together since we haven't done this type of problem before. If I sell one, am I using the wrong word, business people? Is it revenue or profit that I want to talk about here? What you bring into the cash register. Is it profit? And revenue is what you actually get to keep at the end of the day. Is that right?
I think revenue maybe start with business.
I can't remember. I just say what you gain. Sorry, I don't teach business classes enough to remember their terms, so I don't want to mess you guys up later in life. So if we sell one, that means that how much did you make? How much did you get off that one? $325, right? That's what you put in the register. So $325. What about if you sell two? How do you know that? How did you get that just now? Yes, tell me how you calculate. Let's look at the pattern so that we can make a pattern when we don't know how many. Yeah, okay. So if you sell two, 325 times 2. We've done this kind of pattern thinking before, haven't we? If I sell 3, how can I model that? How do I know how much money I put in my register or in my pocket whenever I sell 3 of these? 325 times 3. Do you guys see the variable? Do you see the number that's changing depending on the number of items or units I'm talking about? Yeah. Up here I could have put a 1, couldn't I? This is the variable. This is the X in my problem, isn't it? And you see how it relates to this thing? The amount of money that I get from my customer for the product is always the cost times however many that I sold, right? So over here, for how much I gained, I'm going to say 325 times X. And what is X again? What's X stand for? Because I should be explicit in this so that we don't get confused. Let X represent what? What's X? What's the number changing over here? Give it to me in regular words. The number of what? Pieces, number of units, right? Those gas things we're talking about. Let X equal Number of barbecue units. Barbecue units. Okay. Let's talk about your cost. So that's how much we get to put in the cash register if we sell one. What's our cost, though? Well, there's some set amount. How much do I have to pay no matter what happens? What's my fixed? $39,000? Okay. It's okay. This is the first time we've talked through this kind of word problem. This is a really good one to learn together. So $39,000, right? That was our base bill. Didn't rely on the product. Then my cost goes up every time I produce one, right? So if I had one barbecue unit, my cost would be, what was it per thing, the cost? 125 or something? I don't see it on my screen. What was it? It's 175? Okay. So if I had one, the cost would be 175 times 1. If I had two of those things, it would be 175 times 2. Do you see where the variable is going? I'm going to attach it to 175 for the cost, right? This right here, even though my terms I was getting mixed up a second ago, and I'm not even going to try to fix myself because I just made a mess. But this right here is such a classic business problem. Even if you own your own business, if you want to talk about it even on the most basic of terms, you might have a model that looks like this. You're going to have rent. You're going to have your electric bill. You're going to have some things that won't really change that we consider fixed. This right here is considered a fixed cost. This right here, if you're ever in another math class, is called the variable cost. It's the one that varies or changes depending on the product, the number of products you're talking about. So fixed is always the number without the X. Variable is the one with the X. Just vocab for fun, okay? But now that we have these two things, we said X is the number of barbecue units. The money you get at the register is $325 times however many. The money you had to actually pay to survive is $39,000 plus 175 times that same number that you had to make to sell. How am I going to know when there's a break-even point? So I have my gain or my, I guess we were calling it profit a second ago, and my cost. How do I know when those are the same? When one's not more than the other? Yeah, it makes them equal, right? Good. There are different ways to look at this. Again, if you take a business class in the future, you may see it a little slightly different, but the model idea is so much the same, you'll be fine. So make them equal. Solve for X. Look at that. First, I should get the X's on the same side, right? Get them alone. Which one do you want to move? Okay, it doesn't matter which one. I'm going to pick 175. When I move it over here, it becomes what? Side and front changes, right? Like that? You guys with me? I moved it across the equal, so the plus in front became a negative. $39,000. Oh, that looks horrible. Equals, and what are those two numbers subtracted? 325 minus 175. To get X by itself, I want to get rid of the 150. It's attached by multiply, so the opposite of multiply is divide. Divide both sides by 150. What's X equal to? Somebody interpret that. Tell me what that X equals 260 means.